Have you ever wondered how a flight that seems normal can suddenly turn into a scary disaster? On April 28, 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was on a routine trip when suddenly its fate took a frightening turn. During the flight, the roof of the plane suddenly collapsed. A large part of the plane got disintegrated and the passengers went through a scary experience. This is the moment when the sky turned itself into a dangerous crater. What happened in this flight is to know. Stay tuned, because we are going to tell you the real story of this terrible incident. It was the day of April 28, 1988, when Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was ready to take off from Hilo, Hawaii to Honolulu. It was a Boeing 737-297 aircraft, which is usually used for short hop flights. A total of 90 passengers and 5 crew members were on board that day, most of whom were traveling on a short flight between the Hawaiian Islands. The day seemed clear. No one had any idea that the plane would not reach its destination. The weather in the morning was clear and the flight was on time. The plane took off from Hilo Airport at about 12:05. Everything was normal. But the age of the aircraft, which was already 19 years, and it had an experience of about 90,000 flying hours, was pointing towards a silent crisis somewhere. The flight flew normally for the first 20 minutes. The pilot and co-pilot were discussing in the cockpit, while the passengers were sitting comfortably enjoying their short journey, but perhaps during this time, something was happening on the outer body of the plane, which no one could see. A hidden crack was slowly growing. No one could have guessed that the consequences of this small crack could be so dire. The flight had started moving correctly on its path, and the aircraft is at an altitude of approximately 24,000 feet. But then suddenly at 48 o'clock in the evening, there was a huge explosion. A huge sound shook the whole plane. In an instant, a large part of the roof of the plane burst, leaving the inside of the plane open in the air. The passengers started screaming, and the force of the wind. Everything started disintegrating. This scene was very scary. It seemed as if a part of the sky had suddenly joined the plane. Due to the collapse of the roof, the pressure of the plane was lost. A fierce stormy wind engulfed everyone. The passengers tried to stick to their seats, but the wind was so strong that it became difficult for anyone to maintain balance. The crew members were also trying to manage the situation, but this was a situation which no one had expected. This incident happened to no one. The pilot and co-pilot immediately tried to take control of the plane. They immediately realized that the situation was not normal. Now they had only a few minutes, and they had to land the plane safely as soon as possible. After this sudden disaster in the plane, Captain Robert Shoran Stein and First Officer Maun Kahari immediately used their experience. They knew that the plane could completely disintegrate at any time. Although the nose and cockpit of the plane were still safe, their priority now was to somehow get the plane to Honolulu. Their biggest challenge was to keep the plane stable, as the airflow had become completely unbalanced due to the roof being torn off. Along with trying to reduce the speed of the plane, they had to find the right time to bring the plane down, and the situation was so dangerous that any pilot could easily panic, but Captain Robert and Maureen faced the situation with their wisdom and courage. The passengers inside the plane were still in shock due to the speed and pressure of the air. Many passengers had become unconscious due to the drop. Crew members, flight attendants Clarence Thomas and Michael Elder, were trying to help the passengers, but a very scary truth had come to light in all this when the roof of the flight burst. Stewardess Clarence C.C. Lansing was standing near that part. Within a moment, she was pulled out of the plane due to the force of the fierce wind. No one had imagined that a flight attendant would disappear like this while performing her duty. This scene, it could blow anyone's mind, and at that moment everyone on the plane understood that they were in the middle of some invisible crisis. The passengers had to remain fastened to their seat belts to save themselves. No one knew what was going to happen next. It was going to be that it was a moment that filled everyone inside the flight with fear and despair. The pilots immediately declared an emergency, and the flight attendants tried to keep the passengers calm, but everyone knew that the situation with the plane was getting out of control. The walls were shaking, and everyone knew that if the structure of the plane collapsed completely, then it would be impossible to escape. In the midst of all this, The flight attendant was also losing her courage because she had lost one of her companions, and now her life was also in danger. Captain Robert Sean Stein and First Officer Noreen Kari tried their best to save the plane despite its rapidly deteriorating condition. After decompression of the plane, there was a shortage of occupants and passengers were asked to wear oxygen masks due to the collapse of the roof. The speed of the plane was so great that it was becoming very difficult to keep the speed of the plane steady. For the pilots, it was a battle against time. As they tried to reduce the speed of the plane, the pilots started bringing it down every second. It was a new challenge for them, and they had to rely only on their experience and courage. They knew that the pressure on every part of the plane was very high, and it could break completely at any time, but they had no other option. But this was a very scary time for the passengers trying to reach Honolulu Airport. Some people had become unconscious, and some were trying to save their lives with the help of their seat belts. There was an atmosphere of screams and fear inside the plane. To calm people down as much as possible they tried, but the situation was so serious that no one was sure they would be able to return safely. When the pilots stabilized the plane to some extent, they immediately contacted Honolulu Airport and asked for permission to make an emergency landing. Bringing the plane down was extremely difficult. It was a dangerous task, as one wrong move could have scattered the entire aircraft, but the pilots saw only one way out at this time: to land the aircraft as quickly as possible. At this time, the altitude of the aircraft had come down to about 13,000 feet every second for the passengers and crew. What was valuable was that the plane decided its landing direction after receiving instructions from the control tower of Honolulu Airport. In this entire incident, the pilots of the plane demonstrated their ability and prepared to land the plane safely even in impossible situations. Before landing, the scene inside was heart-wrenching. Fear was visible on the faces of the passengers, and everyone was glued to their seats. No one had any hope that they would survive as the plane approached Honolulu Airport. The whole world's eyes were on this flight. The exterior of the plane was badly damaged, and it was difficult to control it. The pilots had to be extremely cautious because there was still a risk of the plane falling. As soon as the plane reached the runway, everyone breathing stopped. The pilots tried to land the plane very carefully on the runway. Finally, at 2 o'clock in the evening, the plane made a successful emergency landing at Honolulu Airport. This dangerous flight came to an end, but its memories and the fear hidden behind it will remain forever. Emergency teams started working immediately after the plane landed. Passengers were evacuated and the injured were treated. 65 people were injured in this incident, some of whom were seriously injured, but the biggest pain was the flight attendant. Claire and Cece Lansing was lost, which no one saw after this accident. This incident shook not only Hawaii but the entire world. NTSB National Transportation Safety Board immediately started an investigation to find out the reason for the explosion of the plane. Investigators meticulously examined every part of the plane and found that small cracks had been forming on the plane's body over a long period of time, which had been missed during routine inspections when the plane flew at high altitude and under pressure. These cracks then combined to break off a large portion of the aircraft's roof. This problem is known as metal fatigue in the aerospace industry, in which the metal becomes weak after continuous use. This phenomenon indicates that older aircraft from time to time inspection and repair is extremely important. Many passengers who came to Aerosmith told how at that time they felt that their life was over. The speed of the wind, the sudden shaking of the plane and the explosion of the roof, all this combined with the horror of any human being, reports NTSB. Some passengers may have told that when the roof of the plane burst, they were trying to hold each other along with their fellow passengers. They were somehow able to remain tied to their seats with the help of seat belts, but there was an atmosphere of fear and dread that some passengers they had closed their eyes thinking that they would not survive. This incident of Aloha Airlines Flight 243 brought a big change in the aviation industry. After this accident, airlines started paying special attention to the inspection and repair of their planes. Strict regulations for maintenance and inspection were implemented. Although this incident was a tragedy for many people, it taught the world that technical and human errors should be caught at the right time. This incident improved aviation safety. Aloha Flight 243 made its place not only in air history but also in world aviation history.
This accident left a deep mark in the hearts of all the passengers and crew members who witnessed this incident. Their stories and experiences will forever be associated with this plane tragedy and will remind us that safety and caution should never be ignored. Thank you friends for watching our video till the end. If you liked this video, hit in your share with friends, and yes, do not forget to subscribe the channel. It is absolutely free for you and helps us a lot. So let's meet again in such more interesting videos. Till then, bye and thank you.